Okay, welcome to our Zoom session. This is kind of an open mic session, but we do have some things to tidy up from the last session that I'd like to go over, some things to do with the brood mares and deciding what to breed to and what actually is the process that I go through when I do a broodmare recommendation for somebody. I think it would be enlightening for you to follow that process. So what I've done to get started here, I have on your screen to the right a typical report that I send out. Somebody sends me their mares and they want to know what to breed them to. So this is the summation of what I learned in the process of checking these mares out. This particular report I did several years ago from somebody in Australia. I chose to use an Australian one because I don't want to expose anybody to I don't know, embarrassment about their mares, I guess. And I dealt with this fellow's
Sirius XM Network. Hope all is well. Games in the schedule beginning before 1 Eastern. EPL at 9 a.m. Southampton, Manchester United, 11:30. Chelsea, Tottenham Hotspur. National feed Sirius X.
Your announcements. Thank you very much. But he sent me a list of 6 or 7 mares that he had. And I do an analysis of them. And one of the most important things that I do first, is, other than bringing up the pedigree, as you see here on the left, this is Sechny Bromac by McCardle. Some of these sires down here you're probably not familiar with. They're all New Zealand or Australian sires. But McCardle spent quite some time down there and had a lot of foals and was quite successful down there. This particular mare, as you can see, raced, took a record of 154, close to it anyway. They have their times in tenths of a second, so it's 153.9 is 53.4, 54, whatever you want to call it. And most of their racing is done over either half mile or 5/8 mile tracks, and they don't list the track size in their reporting, so it's makes it a little difficult to adjust the times. I basically use 5/8 these times as having been over a 5/8 track in order to kind of compare them one to the other. But Sechny Bromac, after I look at this and I see what are the sire lines involved in this mare? There's a Bred Radios line. That's the same line as Abercrombie. Here's an Albatross line through Niatross Nihilator. Here's a No Nukes line through a grandson, Live or Die, who went to New Zealand and stood there, quite successful down there. And here's another Albatross line, and this Schulte, he was exported to Australia as well early in his career. So basically what we're looking at here is a mare that is, if you remember your color scheme, it's a blue, red, red, red deal. There are 3 Metaskipper lines and 1 Adios line to deal with. So we have to find a sire that's compatible to something like this. And one of the first things I do, I want to go and see, if I'm not familiar with the sire and their accomplishments, the broodmare, this ultimately is going to be the broodmare sire here. I want to see what his statistics look like. And at the time I did this, over here you can see that McCardle, his percentage, and what I did here too, of course, to make it more relevant to this chap in Australia, is that I just used Australian statistics because the Australian statistics are derived from the kind of broodmares that they have there. So it makes sense to make it as appropriate to his environment as I can. I do the same thing when I'm doing trotters, looking at trotters from Sweden or France or elsewhere or whatever. You deal with the statistics that are important to them, which are the local statistics. One of the big differences in terms of $100,000 winners in Australia is there aren't very many purses that go for the kind of money that would generate a lot of $100,000 winners. So you tend to have to lower your expectations a little in terms of ratings. This particular mare actually rated pretty good. She got a 71 with a record of 154. A lot of the Australian mares, the New Zealand mares, an awful lot of them are 60 or less. In fact, you will find them down in the 30s that are considered to be successful mares because they got a couple to the races. They view the whole process differently down there. They only pay out money for the top 3 in a race. And so winning is great, but we were at the races one time with in Melbourne with a chap who had a horse that had just had several races and hadn't made any money yet, but his trainer had assured him that the horse was ready to place. In other words, there was a chance he might get second or third, and he was kind of over the moon at the prospect, if you can imagine. Anyway, they have a different mentality to it. They enjoy the races, I think, more for what they are, the entertainment side of it, as opposed to the commercial side of it, which is kind of what Anthony McDonald's trying to promote, and I think it's something that we should all bear in mind. It's not always the bottom line in this business, but if you are in the business to be commercial, then you have to pay attention to the statistics, the percentages, and so forth. So anyway, let's have a look at this mare in a little more detail. I'll show you, for instance, McCardle. You'll see that his statistics are quite different now than what they were back then. First thing I go to is go to the stallion tab, put in your broodmare sire McCardle. Do a stallion offspring. And that'll give you an idea of basically what he's like as a sire. Where does he rank? Because the percentages of performance as a sire will dictate what they are for a broodmare sire. They tend to be very closely related. Now, as you can see here, McCardle overall, this includes all of his. These are New Zealand ones or Australian, New Zealand ones in here as well. His overall statistics show 13.4% $100,000 winners of the ones of racing age. Now, if I want to look at just North America, I can filter, I can click on North America, filter by selection, and it'll redo them. And now all of a sudden, in North America, you see, his statistics are much different, are much higher. They're 23.4%. So that's a very good percentage for a sire. And you can expect his broodmare sire percentage to be somewhat comparable. It's usually a bit lower. It might be somewhere between 18 to 20 or something like that. We'll have a look at that shortly. So I'm going to get out of this. I'm going to clear the filter here. You go down here, takes me back to the original list. Now I'm going to just filter for Australia and New Zealand. I just want to see them. Okay, here's where this is what knocks the average down, obviously. Now back when I looked at these previously, oh, that was the combined statistic. Obviously, it must have been. But anyway, here's the Australian statistic, 3.8%, not nearly as good. And his offspring are out of a variety of New Zealand and mares, and sometimes shipping stallions like Badlands Hanover, Most of these are horses that actually stood in New Zealand, Australia, and New Zealand. And then I go over here and I look at what did he do with these mares. I want to click on this while I got this list here. Go over here and click on mares and filter that one. And I see that as far as these mares are concerned, he was even worse. So right away, McArdle's prospects in New Zealand and looked kind of dicey, to say the least. So let's see how he's doing over there as a broodmare sire. So here's his statistics as a broodmare sire. Again, these are joint statistics. You can see remarkably, McArdle, despite his, well, we'll go to the North America one here because that's got to be way higher than that. Actually, only 10.4. That's quite remarkable. I mean, his racing percentage was, what, 24%?
Yeah.
But as a broodmare, he's only 10.4. Gives you a little bit of food for thought there. If you had a McArdle mare, obviously, it's a situation where you have to be very careful where you go for a sire with McArdle because he doesn't have a broad spectrum of possibilities as a broodmare sire, given the 10.4%. And you can see the sorts of sires that have worked best for them. Rock and roll, sports rider. I don't know what the common element is down through here. Abercrombie, Arts Place, and Abercrombie in this. Abercrombie here, Arts Place, Abercrombie in here, Arts Place in here, Abercrombie in here, Arts Place in here, Abercrombie in here, an Arts Place, second dam in here, Arts Place dam in here, by a grandson of Arts Place. So obviously, McArdle, just generally looking at this list, you can see that the sires that work best with them somehow or other have Arts Place or Abercrombie in their maternal lines. There's another one well said here. So Mach 3. So this is going to be an exercise of being very careful. Here we're going to, you can see here that none of these are, well, sports riders over there. Well, these are the North American ones. I'm going to get rid of these again. And we're going to have a look at what the New Zealand ones look like. And you can see that 3 out of the top 4 are by Bettor's Delight. Now, these are all have come along 2014, 13. They weren't racing at the time I had done this report, but all things considered, I said that Bettor's Delight is a logical choice for this mare, for a McArdle mare. And it turns out that indeed that has been the case. There's 1, 2, 3 more down here. They're getting down into another one down here. So Bettor's Delight obviously was a good choice. And if you look at the mare herself, he didn't actually breed her to Bettor's Delight. He bred her to the Fool Brother. Let me go back here. You see what he bred her to is Roll with Joe. And it got to the races, but it didn't turn out to be that great. But such things happen. There's another one down here that I looked at. This is the Rathmore lady. She's by a sire called Washington, VC. I remember him well because I had a client from New York at the Harrisburg sale back in 98 or 99, that was. And he was looking to buy something that, a nice colt, and I touted this one to him and he ended up buying them. They turned out to be a decent sire, a decent racehorse. And then he went over to Australia because after his racing career was over. Well, still haven't learned how to spell. So looking at this particular mare, I was interested in what Christian Cullen had done as a sire and what the combination of Christian Cullen and Washington VC had done. And so it's not just the broodmare sire. If you have a situation where there's some more questions to be asked, and the broodmare sire hasn't really shown great performance, then perhaps there is an opening if you look at what the combination of Christian Cullen, for instance, Washington VC has done. We're looking at the offspring of Washington VC. See, he wasn't much either. But this is, again, this is $100,000 bar. If you use 50,000, that might be 10 or 12%. So it's a little hard to compare. It's a bit of apple and orangey kind of thing. But if I wanted to look at, for instance, what Washington VC had done, I'm sorry, I got this wrong the wrong way. I want to put Washington VC in here. And we're going to put Christian Cullen up here. Christian Cullen has been one of the more successful sires in Australia and New Zealand in terms of a homebred. He's a Matt Scooter line out of an albatross maternally. And you can see here that actually this mare, Be Happy Sam, has produced the best one by Christian Cullen. He's a thrill. And here's Rathmore Lady by Christian Cullen. So this is a full sister to the one that made 400,000 down there. So we're looking at I was looking at the sire line here, since Christian Cullen is a Matt Scooter line. It made sense to me to go back to the Matt Scooter line with something that was somewhat similar maternally, if we didn't want to go this way. So I suggested that he breed to now. Oh, it's what are we looking at? Be Happy Sam. It's this one here. So as you can see, I suggested that he go to Mach 3. And here's the offspring that he got. Be Happy Mach, 233,000. And she hasn't been bred since then. That was the last one. But he hadn't been having any luck getting her in foal, it looks like, all along here. So anyway, it gives you some insight a little bit into the sorts of things that you have to look for. For instance, when I did up this cross here, if I wanted to separate out the mares, there are only 4 of them. I could check each one of them and see what that combination has produced as a broodmare sire combination. We already saw that this one hasn't had any foals. This one has 2 foals, produced nothing, one by Mr. Feelgood, one by another Lanarkost, whatever he is. Nothing there. Nothing there. But that's the sort of thing you can do. You can just, make a little tabulation. You go down through the mares that have that combination. Make a little tabulation on the side, the total number of foals that were bred. And then alongside, mark down the ones that were, how many successful $100,000 winners there were and what they were by. That'll steer you in the direction of where you want to go. And that's assuming that you have some statistical information to go on. Of course, when you have a mare that's by a sire that basically has no broodmares, it's a little different prospect. Then you got to go looking for similar sires that may give you some indication how they've done.
Really, once you go unplug the tree. Oh, you did? Lights are on.
Doug, your mic is on. Okay, I'm just going to bring this up. You might not be able to see this. I posted this the other day. This is the stallion finder. Again, this is an older copy. I will be updating this in the next month, and you'll be able to get it. I'll post it when it's available. They're still announcing the odd sire here. But if you haven't already read it, basically what it does is it lists all of the sires that are available in North America, where they're standing. This one's in Ontario. This is My Man Charlie. It might be a little hard for you to read. This is kind of small print. I can't make it any bigger, but just believe what I tell you, what's showing here. And My Man Charlie is by Mach 3, and he has the maternal lines of Arts Place and Precious Bunny. And alongside of here is a little cryptic quote of what they should be bred to, what kind of mares, in a general sense. This is not meant to be absolute. It kind of steers you in the right direction. If you look at all these mares, all of these mares have very similar pedigrees. They're all Matt Scooter line, which is green. They all have dams, which are Abercrombie line, primarily through Arts Place. And they all have second dams that are Meadow Skipper line. So a variety of things. There's some no-nukes, some albatross, a camphella, whatever. But when you go and look at the progeny for all of these, and you can do this, practice this. I urge you to do this so that you can get familiar with what it is, how important it is to find a sire in here that is similar to the ones that you're working with, whether it's a sire you want to breed to, or a sire or a broodmare sire that is similar to, that perhaps has no progeny, but is similar to one of these. Now, in the instance we were looking at, I'll just see if there's there may not be one here, but okay, this is one that's kind of a hot question. It was the subject of a couple of your questions down by the seaside, and other stallions that have basically they have maternal lines that are perhaps difficult to match to because they're all the same. The 4 lines that you would use to look for in a mare normally in any particular sire are the broodmare sire line, which in this case is Kamfala, and the second dam line, which is in this case is Western Hanover. And the sire lines in the dam of his sire, in this case, Meadowskipper through Beachtel, and another Kamfala line. So these are, when you put this up on the screen here, you would see, well, let's go down, we'll go down and see him. There he is. He's right here, down by the seaside. Red. But some beach somewhere is also red maternally. So what do you do with how do you match to a sire like that? Because a lot of the mares have different sire lines. One interesting aspect of this guy here is that his dam is inbred to big towners. So maybe it would help if you brought a mare back here that's at least has Kamfala and Western Hanover in it, and plus a big towner line, focusing on as much on the maternal lines of the sire here rather than working with these. Because there are all kinds of good individuals who get to the races to make a lot of money, who they're not doubles, they're not TB patterns, but perhaps they have a strong, they bring back a mare that strongly has Western Hanover and Kamfala lines plus big towner, and maybe something else. For instance, Spring Hanover, if you look at it, the dam down by the seaside is inbred to big towner, and that's Margaret Parish. So this is a double to Margaret Parish, this mare. So if you had a mare that had a double to Margaret Parish in it, and it was reasonably close to this, then it's worth a shot. We won't really know until sometime late next summer what's going to happen with down by the seaside. But I'm sure that he will have some good ones. But whether or not his maternal lines limit his appeal to a very narrow band of mares, right now I would say that would be the case. But if he can get as many as possible out of that limited opportunity, he can still be a very successful sire. We also looked at the same sort of scenario with Poppy Rob Hanover, another sire that's similar to this. This is some beach somewhere line with full of Meadowskipper lines below. One aspect of this that I didn't cover, though I didn't point out, was that there's always the possibility of a TB pattern with Mat Scooter or Direct Scooter. In other words, if you can find a mare that's inbred to the Mat Scooter, Direct Scooter, Mach 3 down here, that would be a very viable opportunity. There was, in fact, only one that I found among the yearlings that down by the seaside had this year, and I put it on my list accordingly. Not sure who bought it, but I'll be following it closely to see how it goes, because that what happens here is going to dictate what happens to Pappy Rob, because they're very, very similar style. In fact, the Kampala Western Hanover combination is what's in Pappy Rob Hanover. So a lot of none of this is set in stone. You can make a prediction as best you can, but my problem with this particular situation, this scenario, is there are no sires out there that have this kind of makeup. Certainly no successful ones. So is this just some kind of a new wave situation? And just because it hasn't happened before means that it will never happen? It could be, but things can change and you can get a new situation develop. But until that situation develops to the point where you can be sure what the pattern is going to be, personally, it would make the offspring of these sires a little bit risky, more risky than I would be prepared to take on, considering the money you have to pay for the foals. I mean, down by the seaside, foals sold very well this year for the most part. And I wish everybody luck with them. But it could be another Always Be Mickey situation where you got 4 or 5 really good ones, and then you go a long way down the list to find the next one out of a lot of foals.
All right, well,
we shall see. Craig, you had a comment?
Yeah, what happens if you took an Art Major mare out of a Cam's Card Shark second dam and bred her to down by the seaside? You'd get some big towner in there.
Yeah, but there's no Abercrombie to hook on to.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So we'll wait. We'll see. It's just one of those evolutions in the breed that happens periodically and shakes the world up. We saw the same thing happening when along came Darlin LaBelle out of nowhere and turned basically trotting upside down. Because up till then it was all Valley Victory this and Valley Victory that, and we were all wondering what's going to happen when we get into that Valley, everybody in that Valley Victory corner, and all of a sudden along comes Darlin LaBelle and Andover Hall and Chapter 7. That progression is going on, well, hopefully, because there's another problem. Now we've got Chapter 7 and Walner with the same problem. Chapter 7 doesn't have the problem, but Walner has. Same problem as these, as down by the seaside.
Yeah.
He's dominated by the speedster line maternally. So where do you go with Walner? And also, similar situation there in terms of finding a TB pattern. There aren't very many mares that are inbred to the Nova Victory line. Very, very few. So it may take a year or so for that to work out. But again, they spend an awful lot of money on Walners, and I personally wasn't that convinced that they were worth it. One thing I did notice, almost a third of the ones they did of the Walners were line bred to Conway Hall or Andover Hall or something like that, which again makes no sense to me, because 3x3 line breeding is just not a successful scenario. Oh, there'll be some that'll get away with it, but particularly if it's a filly. But for the most part, I just put a line right through those when I saw them in the catalog, because I've seen it before many, many times. It doesn't work. You can take a chance that it'll work. There's always no such thing as 0% possibility, but it is a long, long shot. So those are my kind of wrap up remarks with respect to the broodmare selection process. In case anybody else has got anything else specific to that you want to ask right now, I'll tackle some of these other things. Okay, question from somebody. What makes a sire line? What makes a sire of sires? I mean, why do we don't have more sires that extend sire lines? Well, I guess again, it's like every other question in this business. There's no single answer to that. But there are some things that have been speculated. The number one situation is availability of top broodmares. And the control that the larger farms have in terms of who they pick, who they choose to be the next great sire. They don't get it right all the time. They make a lot of mistakes. But they do have the opportunity to breed their pick to special mares, and as a consequence, perhaps get a son that will move the line along. Doesn't always happen that way. Mach 3, for instance. When he went to stud, he couldn't find a place in the States. Nobody wanted him. Hanover didn't want him. Nobody wanted him. He was a Matt Scooter. Who wants a Matt Scooter? So he went to Tara Hills and was bred to mares all over Ontario and the northern states. And in fact, some beast somewhere was bred in, I think, Ohio. And all of a sudden became not only one of the greatest racehorses ever, but probably one of the greatest studs ever. Now, will he be himself a sire of sires? Well, he's got a pretty good start with Captain Treacherous, although there's a half a dozen other sons out there that aren't nearly as good. Maybe they, just because they were out early, because they weren't much really all that strong in terms of racehorses. And they became sires before the early on as a result. But we'll see what happens here now. We've got Huntsville. I like the prospects of Huntsville. Huntsville is, has an Abercrombie line in his maternal line, so gives them a much broader opportunity to be successful. And as did, of course, Captain Treacherous. So that remains to be seen. But if you go back through the history of sires, let's just take the Meta-Skipper line, for instance. Oh, one other thing, I want to comment on one other thing before I go back to that.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Huntsville stands in New York.
Yes.
That makes it extremely difficult to breed a mare that has a 4 by her side to him, because you have to ship both the mare and the foal to New York to be bred.
Yeah.
That will reduce his chances.
Yeah. It does. Yeah, it limits his opportunity. It does, but they choose to do that in the interests of whatever. And I had the same question in discussing a mare with Doug. Doug is online here now.
Yeah.
He has he has a sister to Doug is has a very nice mare that he's bred several times in Muscle Hill, and of course she's the dam of bar hopping, who now is standing in Hanover Shoe Farms. And he has a full sister to her, but she's down in Kentucky. And we were discussing the breeding, and he was talking about breeding to, the conventional hot sires down there, Father Patrick, the Love You sire that's at Hanover Shoe Farms, different ones that are, to him, are more accessible because he can get the semen. But when I looked at the pedigree, it really didn't make any sense to me the way they're shaping up. I thought that his best option was Chapter 7 for that particular mare. But Doug has the same problem. His mare is in Kentucky. And he would have to ship the mare and the foal up to New York. So I guess the question you have to ask yourself, is it worth your while to go for the best possible stallion, regardless of the fact that you have to inconvenience, there's some inconvenience to shipping the mare or some risk possibly to the foal that she's already got. It's a balancing act. I don't know. I haven't got the answer. But I agree that, George, that's certainly a limitation in terms of certain sires getting access to the best mares that possibly could be bred to them. But let's go back up here on another aspect of it. I go back to a quotation by Mark Neal, and it's in the front of my book on Queen Among Queens. And she was interviewed in Hoofbeats. And one of the things she said struck me early on was that she liked a sire that was outcrossed and a mare that was inbred, or words to that effect. And that's basically what's happening here, is that sire lines tend to consist of sires that are not necessarily strongly inbred maternally. And there was a chapter in the original care and training of the trotter and pacer that the USTA put out back in the 60s or so, 50s maybe.
60.
And there was a chapter in there on breeding by a well-respected chap. I can't remember his name, but
Jim Harrison.
Jim Harrison, yes. Jim was very, very knowledgeable guy in pedigrees, as was Mark Neal, kind of the equivalent of Jim in Canada. But Jim's opinion was that sires of sires were in themselves not strongly bred maternally. He actually makes that statement in his book. So what does that mean? Let's look down. If you go down through here, in this sequence here on Metaskipper, we can even go back to back further than that, but Metaskipper has no particular strength to his maternal line. There he is here. I mean, he doubles up with Peter Volo. Peter Volo doesn't have any particular connection to the X Factor. He doubles up on Guy Axworthy. Same thing. There's no particular connection to the X Factor there. This is just simply a good pedigree match across, doubling two lines across here. There's a couple of other things down here: Napoleon Direct, Peter the Brewer. And if you look up here, this is all kind of funny stuff. Old-fashioned Ashland Wilkes, Gibson, Tom Howell. But there was a strong maternal connection in terms of the names of those individuals. But they weren't carrying anything particular on their maternal line that would be of any consequence. This here, there's nothing down here. So, and then if you look at Most Happy Fella, he does have a trace coming through Volomite and back to an X Factor's horse, Oniska, through San Francisco. But there's nothing down here. It's nothing doubled up in the mare. And Good Time was a good broodmare sire. There's no question about that. And as you can see, again, we got a bit of doubling up across here. Actually, a 3x3 line bred to Aldale. But so the patterns in the old days back then weren't as clear as they seem to be these days, but there's certainly elements of them. But there's nothing particular. You see X Factor highlights here, but there's nothing back of Peter the Brewer or Guy Axworthy. So you keep wandering down. Well, Cam Fella was a different cat. He did have a little bit stronger maternal line, but not that much, because if you look at it, it's bred Hanover, Haldale. There's Haldale. There's an Axworthy line up here in the sire side. He's basically Haldale down through the middle, line bred, double line bred to Haldale. But he does have this ensign Hanover trace to Helen Hanover that goes back through here. But it's just a single trace. And obviously there's a bit of stuff comes through from Volomite through Tar Heel to Brett Hanover. But not particularly strong. There's certainly no double doubles to Helen Hanover or Margaret Paris or anything involved here. And you can follow that thing down here. There's nothing in presidential ball maternally here. Well, that's not an extended line here, but Cam Fella certainly is extended. For the time being, he's got the Better's Delight anyway, Cam's Card Shark, and then Better's Delight. But the question that was asked specifically mentioned Better's Delight, and what's happened to Better's Delight? Why doesn't he have any sons of any consequence? Well, that may be a situation that's about to change, because we do have a number of well-performed sons that have recently gone to stud. Just in this last 2 years, there have been 3 or 4 millionaire horses gone to stud with a variety of maternal lines. So that book is still to be written, but I must admit that Better's Delight sons so far, if you take an overall average, have underperformed relative to what you think they should have done, considering the quality of his offspring himself. Now there are some of his sons have done exceptionally well. I mean, on particular individuals. Not a whole lot wrong with Lather Up, but he's one of a kind. Better's Delight sons need to produce more than just the odd one here and there in order to justify extending the line. And I don't think, well, Lather Up's gone to stud in Ohio, and he probably won't. You'll get pretty much a full book, but whether you'll get the kind of mares that will allow him to move along down the line, I don't know.
He's a grandson of Better's Delight.
Yeah, a grandson. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's a Better's Delight extension.
Yeah.
In order to qualify as a sire line extension, you basically have to have 4 generations, like 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you can say that the line is a separate sire line, or it has a life of its own. most of these sires that are in here, Rustler never produced on. Big Towner got 2 more generations down from there. Presidential Ball might have had some sons in, but nothing else. So for the most part, these sires, Western Hanover obviously has sons, grandsons, and great sons and grandsons now. So that line is still going on. It's the No Nukes line. So it comes down to a combination of things. Opportunity, obviously, is probably the number one aspect of it. And the other aspect of relatively weak maternal lines in the sire, that Mark Neal saw that as an opportunity. And I write about it in my book in Queen Among Queens, that Mark Neal saw the weakness in sires in their maternal line as an opportunity to bring back similar individuals that are stronger than the ones, perhaps a son of Camfellow or a daughter of Camfellow that's better than this one or whatever, to bring it back in combination to somehow improve upon what this one produced, that would make the next generation better than Some Beast Somewhere was. And that goes back to the old saying, return to the sire the best blood of his dam. You're looking the sire of Some Beast Somewhere, and you want to bring back elements that are in his maternal line, but hopefully from pedigrees that are stronger than this. And that's why performance in the dam is important. Because a lot of times sires, for instance, Where's the Beach wasn't particularly noteworthy as a racehorse. But if you can find individuals that you can return back here that have Beach Style, Camfellow, or whatever, the Abercrombie line was particularly important, Abercrombie or Big Towner for down by the seaside. But so that helps, according to Merritt. So it kind of reconfirmed my whole approach that was built upon what I'd read back in the old trotting registered books, the various essays that were written about breeding in the first 2 or 3 editions. That there is a process going on here that continually uses the mares to supplement the maternal lines of the sire in order to produce something better down the road. How you achieve that, I've created my own process for doing that by emphasizing outcrossing on sire line and inbreeding maternally, bringing this stuff back in here. And it for the most part seems to be something that works, or is worth trying anyway. It's better than a guess. So to a certain extent, you do have some factual evidence. Once you do this sort of thing, you can go back over and, for instance, I like to go back over my recommendations like that one I showed you from Australia. 5 or 6 years later, I'll go back and go through those recommendations and see, well, did I get it right? Don't always get it right, or maybe something happened at the particular breeding that he chose out of the 3 or 4 selections wasn't quite the right one or whatever. But there's enough evidence there that I call enough of them right that I must be doing something right. But again,
Hey, Norm,
this is not
I have a question.
Situation.
Yeah, Norm, I have a question. And this has always bugged me. My friend's father owned Henry T. Adios. And Henry T. Adios, basically, he was a mean horse, did very well, but he started a whole new line. And as I look at his pedigree, it's just a mishmash to me. I know there are freaks, but when they have a whole new line, there's got to be something in there that you could pin something on, I would think.
Well, I don't know. He obviously was a decent racehorse back in his day. Probably one of the best ones. $706,000 back in 1958, and in the early 60s.
Yeah.
That's like winning $5 million now, at least. So something worked. You got the Axworthy line, Peter Volo there. There's no Volomite down here. There's another couple of some more weird stuff up here through Howdale. I mean, back then they were a mishmash of lines for the most part. And I think the sires developed as a result of their strength as racehorses, as opposed to their pedigree. Henry T. Adios, I don't think. Let's see what he produced.
Couple
Other than Abercrombie. Silent Majority of it. What's going on here? Seem to be having a little problem here. I hope I'm not running into another crash. Anyway, this is not the, anyway, there was Silent Majority, of course, sire of Abercrombie. I'm gonna have to get out of this here for a second. But that's, let me see. Bear with me. Maybe too much going on in this screen. We'll get rid of some of this stuff. Say Henry T. Adios, his pedigree is modest to say the least in today's terms, because there really is, there's not a whole lot going on across the pedigree, and there's certainly not a whole lot maternally. Nibble Hanover has a trace through Toddington here, Fenella, back to Arian, but I mean, this is pretty minimal stuff. Well, there's another Adieu up there as well. But and have a look at Silent Majority, who's the next one down the line. The Silent Majority had a little bit going for him. He's got an Axworthy direct Axworthy down here. And a Peter Volo and another Axworthy there. There's the Peter Volo there. They're getting a little bit closer to what we see these days. As the breed gets a little bit more refined. I mean, there's a lot of these old sire lines are long gone out of the pedigrees now. And many of them didn't really contribute much in terms of either maternal or paternal strength. But introducing Tar Heel to this particular situation certainly would help. But again, it's, who knows? It's just one of those things to argue over for the next 50 years.
Okay, thank you, Norm.
Norm, I have a question. I noticed in that pedigree that Peter the Great was an X factor. How important is Peter the Great?
Well, Peter the Great is is the source of virtually all trotters in North America. So that makes him pretty important. As far as his pedigree is concerned, you can see that there is an X factor source in here through Pilot Junior, and it's across his pedigree. This doesn't count here because it's a SAR, but it is interesting to see that he does have maternally through Grand Sentinel a trace to Pilot Junior. Juliet is another X factor trace through Pilot Junior. So a minor one, but it's there. This is a lot of these pedigrees down here. Most of it is guesswork and made up and so forth. You read the stories about individuals like Bay Chief. He was a stallion that stood at Burn Farm during the Civil War in Kentucky. And Confederate soldiers came along and requisitioned him, took him, and he disappeared, died in the war somewhere along the way, but that was one of his lone credits, was to be the maternal line of, have a daughter on the maternal line of Peter the Great. The history of standardbreds is full of these interesting little stories. Woodburn Farm, I don't know if anybody's been there in Lexington. It's now Airdrie Stud. It's a thoroughbred farm. And the original farmhouse is there. And inside the farmhouse, it's just a veritable museum of the history of both thoroughbreds and standardbreds. You have the great thoroughbred sire, Lexington, who is back in here somewhere, no doubt. He stood at the Woodburn Farm, as did Bay Chief and Pilot Junior. Pilot Junior stood there. And so this is all part of the history of the maternal lines of standardbred right here. So Peter the Great he's got quite a story behind to him too. He ended up being sold at an auction, and he was going to be, well, basically equivalent to going to the boneyard. Somebody bought him and turned him into a stallion. And now he's the tail male for virtually all the trotters in North America. So such are the whims of.
Norman, the reason I ask is I have somewhat of a selfish interest too. Are the Golden Cross that we had created, and they're both deceased now, was between Always in Style, my dam, and the Keystone Raider. I've always looked at her descendants, but I never looked backwards. I was fooling around with your program last week, and just as you're doing today, I looked backwards from Always in Style, and about what I think is 4 or 5 generations before her, I found an X factor to Peter the Great, and it's the only one I see in there. So I guess I assume that something awful good must, and it's both in the dam side of the broodmare and in the dam side of the sire.
Yeah, but there are Always in Style. Go back here. Look, you got Margaret Parrish back here.
Oh my, yeah.
And Todd has Arian in back of him. You got that's about it for on this side. Abercrombie through Dwayne Hanover goes back to Adieu. So it doubles up through Dylan Axworthy, Adieu Dylan. So there's some X factor stuff in this mare. There's no question about it.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing in Worthy Boy that I'm aware of, but I mean, there's certainly some pretty decent stuff maternally here. Eileen, in fact, is really quite an important mare in the overall scheme of things. She shows up in a lot of top trotters, particularly, and this mare Ecstasy. If you go into, if you look at Australian breds, maternal lines of Australian breds, this Ecstasy mare is everywhere in the top individuals. So there's a story behind every pedigree. See, Ecstasy goes down here to Kathleen by Pilot Jr. And Kathleen, that was a mare that was on Woodburn Farm there. He also, where is it here? It's not here, no. But there are other individuals in this pedigree in Ecstasy. They're very important too, because this guy Mambrino Patchen, if you read the history on him, he's all thoroughbred maternally, goes back to the same sources as Pilot Jr. It goes back through to Old English thoroughbreds and back to the origins of the thoroughbred on X Factor. So there's a fair bit of maternal strength to Ecstasy. And then, of course, she picks up this Pilot Jr. trace again through Peter the Great, and it just kind of marches on from there. Spencer never became much of a sire, but he's very strongly in a lot of maternal lines, and simply because of Ecstasy primarily. And this stuff here. So,
Well, Always in Style is an old Castleton farm pedigree.
I think that's where she started.
Alerted.
yeah, basically this is here. This is trotting bred. Although there was some pacings showing up here, but all this stuff is trot bred back here, for the most part. Produced mostly trotters. But Worthy Boy was kind of not ambidextrous, but ambigatrous, I guess you call it. He produced both pacers and trotters.
Yeah, Stars Pride and Harold J.
Yeah, exactly. So that's where it all kind of transitioned into Worthy Boy, of course, being the source of most of the Worthy Boy line pacer in Pacers, which goes through Direct Scooter, among others, by Bird. So yeah, dig through your mares and go back and learn a little about the history and read the book, and you'll see where they fit in. And it's all kind of keep you busy around the fire, sitting in front of the fireplace with your eggnog at New Year's this year. Read the book.
Especially since we'll all be home.
Okay.
Thank you.
What else got here? I had a question about X Factor strength and whether or not, and how does it apply to the stallion as opposed to the mare? I understand that X Factor has an impact on the mare. It seems to be, especially if it's doubled across, and especially if it's doubled across with key individuals like Margaret Parrish or Ellen Hanover, and to an extent Hatteras, and some of these other ones. Well, X Factor is basically a maternal element to a pedigree. And it does appear in the maternal size of sires. And it will help if it appears, let me say, I can't say will, I can't say, you can't be positive about all this stuff. You're making observations about what you see as successful, and you're trying to deduct that perhaps the success is attributable to this, that, or the other thing. And to my mind, having a reasonable understanding of what happens with the X factor and what it means, it certainly appears to me that you could get very even better fillies if that same trace that's in the maternal side of the mare is also in the sire's maternal line. So not necessarily well, there is to a certain extent it is here and always in style, because you took this mare and you bred it to you had a very successful run with Keystone Raider here. Now, Keystone Raider himself is inbred to the X Factor through maternal line of the Most Happy Fellow and through Tar Heel. Back then, that was a pretty strong combination. Tar Heel and Volomite. Tar Heel was Volomite here. Good Time is the Dam by Volomite on time. So that's a direct double to a very strong X Factor source. And you have the Adieu connection through Dorsch Hanover here too, through Abercrombie. Now Another Mile was a colt, of course, so it didn't make any difference to him. But here's a filly that was pretty good, and another one, every bit as good. And and they in turn should pass something along to their foals accordingly, because they have a certain buildup. And here's Shady Caroline, you're doing, and Rockin' Image, Ponder, you got 3 decent ones out of this mare. And this is a filly, and in turn, here's Helen Hanover. So you're doubling up, and there's the Good Time connection, the Tar Heel connection across the pedigree here. So this filly had a pretty solid component of X Factor with the addition of No Nukes, and she ends up earning $393,000. Don't know if she's been bred yet, but looks like you've started quite a maternal family here, Ed.
Shady Caroline, incidentally, was just in a mixed sale as a 4-year-old racehorse in Indiana last weekend, and I really wanted to buy her back. And she went for about $22,000 more than the limit I had. She sold for 62, and when she was a yearling, she sold for 62. So talk about a family that holds its value.
Well, it's well-respected family, obviously, out where you are, and you've done a great job. You built quite a family out of it, anyway. And that's where it all begins. If you're a breeder, and you can find yourself a mare that you can keep some daughters and develop them into decent, doing the right things like Ed has done in terms of pedigree and so forth, you end up with a good solid base. I mean, that's how the Hanover Shoe Farm started off. With their mares, they had a line of mares there that they expanded on and built on, and they weren't all successful, but there was enough of them carried on to build a dynasty that is still going. So,
Well, the sire Keystone Raider was out of a hell of a mare, Romaine Dancer. I mean, that was one of Max Hemp's best brood mares at one time. I mean, Keystone Raider was a tough horse.
yeah. Well, and so were a lot of the big towners, and I still don't understand why he fell out of favor to the extent that he couldn't extend his line.
Yeah.
I mean, Towner's big guy's about the last one still standing around, I think. Maybe he's not even standing anymore, is he?
I don't think so.
But he, like Big Towner, it's Haldale and Haldale, and it's Haldale and Haldale down here.
Yeah.
Lots of Haldale. But to get up into GNAB, and it's all kind of weird stuff, But I had the, pretty solid maternal combination here across the pedigree.
Well, if you're a maternal family buff, or if you're hung up on maternal families, it goes back to Romola. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the same maternal family as Captain Treacherous.
Well, that's right. The maternal family is important, but it brings up another point. Another question was asked. You have pedigree patterns. You have double doubles, TB patterns. You have doubles to X factor sources. I mean, what's the most important aspect of it? Is there any one single? No, there isn't. There are great horses that have little or no influence on the maternal line of individuals like Margaret Parrish or Helen Hanover. And there are great horses that are not TBs and they're not double doubles. These are all what I would call bonus points when you're looking at a pedigree.
Yep.
The basic components of a good pedigree are still outcrossed on sire line and inbred maternally. And how you achieve that and what additional elements you can inject into that pedigree to make it better than what it might be is up to you. And you make your selections accordingly. And there is no, just because, and a big element of this, of course, too, is what is the historical success of this particular broodmare sire, or this particular maternal family, or this particular sire that you're considering. Just because you can breed to a certain sire and get a double pattern, doesn't guarantee you're going to get a great horse. If the cross percentage is 3% or 4%, you're very unlikely. I mean, the double is not God. Neither is a TB pattern or Margaret Parrish is not, these are all components of certain great pedigrees. And you apply them as best you can in your decisions. But you have to take a consistent approach to make sure you have your facts and your percentages right before you start to introduce these as added. You have to have a proper base to start from. That's why when I do ratings, I will do a rating based on the facts in the pedigree, the speed and earnings in the family.
Norman,
And then
Norman,
Norman,
one of the daughters of Always in Style was Do Me Right, and she had a daughter named Do Me Honor. Could you look at Do Me Honor and comment on what we're seeing there? Because it seems to me every time I've tried to match her up to almost anybody in Indiana, I always get what appears to be pretty strong X factors and other things too.
the important thing here is, of course, you got Cheyenne Ray, very nice racehorse, produced some nice individuals, no question. How has he done as a broodmare sire? That's the question you got to ask yourself. You can only pursue certain alleys so far before you get to a dead end. And I'm not saying he's at a dead end, but you have to be realistic. What has he done as a broodmare sire? Well, he hasn't had much opportunity so far. But of what he's produced is there are 21 now, maybe not, there are 21 of racing age, and the best ones got 76,000, 34,000. And the earliest ones are 2013. In another 3 years, if he was a decent regional broodmare sire, say in Ohio, Indiana, places like that, he should be in at least in the 12 to 15% range. But he hasn't even got started yet. So what do we do?
He's primarily been in Michigan, where
Yeah.
I live, and could be part of the reason why.
Well, yeah, Michigan is dead in the water now, pretty much. But you could go down here and see, well, let's go over here, Cheyenne Ray, and let's see what kind of mares, what kind of profiles do they have? And this might give you an idea as to whether or not this mare, regardless of the fact that she's an accomplished mare, does she have the, interesting, you see, here they are. Actually, 1, 2, 3, 4 of the better ones. Why don't I should have more than that? Oh, there they are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the better ones. Well, yeah, these are pretty minimal here. Have a big counter in them, which is what you got up here. And Cheyenne Ray's own maternal lines are Western, Big Towner, and then you got Big Towner Abercrombie, Big Towner BG's Bunny, and so forth. Your mare was is in here somewhere. See, let me see, maybe. She's Keystone Abercrombie. She's Big Towner, Most Happy Fella, Abercrombie, Worthy Boy. Abercrombie, Worthy Boy. So that's the only one. There's another one. There's an Abercrombie there. But you can't really tell anything here from here because yours is the only one that's in amongst the ones that have produced so far, been produced so far, but out of Cheyenne Ray mares. So I don't know. There's lots of there are sires that have Western Hanover, Big Towner maternally, and there's certainly sires that have Western Hanover, Abercrombie maternally that you might want to try, but. Just looking at the situation right now, this might be a dead end. Doesn't give you a whole lot of confidence in the possibilities, to me anyway. I mean, it's a shame that she's a great mare, and the sire was a decent sire. So why does this happen? I don't know. Opportunity again. If more people would breed to him, perhaps the right kind of mares, then would have kept those mares and bred them rather than just toss them out. Picture might be different, but okay, let me see what else I've got to cover here.
Thanks, Norman.
So it appears that a number of you are still having some difficulty with double doubles and TB patterns and identifying them in pedigree. So perhaps I'll give you a few examples here. And we'll run through a few examples. We'll start with the pacers here. Well, my favorite one is not McCardle, but McQuicken, of course. Not that he's the only one, but he's a very good example of it. I'm going to do a double here. Expand it a little so you can see it a little better. Okay. McCardle, maternal lines, Annihilator through Albatross, and another Metaskipper line here. Look down here. There's a Metaskipper line, there's an Albatross line. Okay, here's an Abercrombie line down here and a Matt Scooter line here. So you go up here and you don't have an Abercrombie line, but you have an Adios line and a Volomite line through Overtrick. So there's your Volomite, Adios, Albatross, Metaskipper. Here's your Volomite, Adios, Albatross, Metaskipper. They're not the same individuals, but they're the same sire lines. So that's a double. Let me throw you one, just a trotter. There's lots of them, but this is one of my favorites. Paul Spears was the creator of this pedigree in Hanover Shoe Farms. Paul was came to pedigree camp a number of times. And so he was into this kind of stuff, doubling back across the pedigree. Valley Victory, Baltic Speed, Valley Victory, another Speedy Crown here. And at the time, that was really, this is back in 2010, 2011, I think, when this is, yeah. So this was a mare, this High Sobriety was a mare that hadn't had much luck with. And they were going to toss her out. In fact, they did toss her out after they got the foal, before it raced. And Paul had bred Swan for All. This is his mare, Swan Lake. And he's the breeder of Swan for All. And if you look in there, you'll see the same kind of influences there. The Florida Pro, the Speedy Crown, and the Florida Pro across the pedigree there. Anyway, this particular mare, every year Hanover breeds certain mares off the farm, particularly to new sires that like to be in the first crop. So this is the one they don't very often do it in Indiana, but that in this case, Paul wanted to breed this mare. This One for All, this mare here. And this was before the double ever came along, by the way. But here you have, starting from the top, here's the Florida Pro line, Arnie Amherst, Super Bowl, Speedy Crown, Speedy Crown. Here's the Arnie Almahurst line, Speedy Crown, Super Bowl. Arnie Almahurst, Speedy Crown, Super Bowl. Arnie Almahurst, Speedy Crown, Super Bowl. That's a double. And what is one of the best examples of it, because it's everything is right in your face, right on the pedigree. So that's what you look for. Start with the 4 lines in the dam. First of all, get these ones lined up, and then look to see if you can fit the other 2 up here. If you don't, that's fine. This might be good enough. So, but maybe there's a sire in the book that you can hunt up that you can find that will give you a double-double. And that's again where the stallion chooser comes into play. That you can actually see the sire lines that are available in certain sires, and in certain sires of sires. There are 4 categories of tables in there. The last category of tables in the book are of the sires of sires. It's back here. Not there yet. Too many pages in this book. Yeah, trotting sires of sires. There's one for pacing sires of sires. And so if you're interested in breeding a sire, breeding to a sire, particular sire, you can go in and say you want to breed to Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe. And you match to his maternal lines. But what is his sire's lines? Well, his sire is Speedy, Smalley, Noble Victory, Muscle Yankee. So there's the other 2 sire lines that you're looking for. Maybe you're looking for. You could even start with this chart on the trotter side. If you've got a trotter you want to breed, and start, since these are the hardest ones to match, are the lines that are in the sires dam, start with them. And then find out which sires have a combination that would work with your mare. Which sire of sires, I mean. And then look and see which ones are there. Are there any of them in my neck of the woods, Ontario? Well, there's one there, there's one there. Look them up, put them on the screen, do a hypothetical. And bingo, you'll be surprised. You'll come up with a double-double just like that. It's just another way of giving you a little bit of a head start on a good pedigree. Okay, those are the double-doubles. Of course, we've done a lot of looked a lot in the last few weeks to Muscle Hill, at Muscle Hill. And in fact, like his offspring, a lot of them, vast majority of them are what you call TB patterns. In fact, that is it's really a feature of many of the sons of Muscle Hill, of Muscle Yankee. We'd have to do a sire profile here to show you. Again, not Cheyenne Ray, we want Muscle Hill, get out of here. So Muscle Hill, as we've seen before, because he's a speedster line sire, in fact, Valley Victory line sire, if you want to narrow it down, or Speedy Crown line, the majority of his best have this feature of being inbred to Speedy Crown line, or at least the speedster line. You see all the way down here. There is the odd one that's not that way, but for the most part, that's the way they are. This one's a little different, Manchego. But as I mentioned before, this is not a TV pattern, but it is a double, because you got Stars Pride, Speedy Crown, Nova Victory. Stars Pride, Speedy Crown, Nova Victory, and here another Speedy Crown. So that's a double, and this one is too. So Muscle Hills, you go down the list, they're either one or the other. It's a pretty good testimonial for pattern breeding certainly in this particular sire. And his sons are doing the same. And interestingly, I just had a reason to look at muscle mass this morning for somebody who just bought a share in a muscle mass filly. And you see the same pattern here for the most part in breeding on speedster line a lot of times. But another aspect of muscle mass in particular is the Nova Victory line. That's here in these are the maternal lines of muscle Muscles Yankee, Speedy Crown, Nova Victory. So the Nova Victory line is a feature in virtually all of these down here, with the possible exception of situations where you have two Star Spread lines, like here and here, and here and here. And this is the odd other one. So they're not all 100%, but there's another one there, another one there, and another one there. So in looking at the pedigree of that particular filly, she didn't match the profile specifically with respect to Nova Victory, but she had a double Super Bowl or double Stars Pride in her pedigree and a Speedy Crown. So maybe it'll work. It's a kind of like the lesser of the two profile factors, but there is some hope for it. It is out of a cadaver mare, as I recall, and here's the cadaver, a couple of cadavers here that worked out. And this one here, of course, has the double Star Sprite line. So there's hope for it, although it is, as I say, it's not the general rule, but it is an exception, somewhat of an exception to the rule. Now, I had another question about Some Beach Somewhere mares. And what do you breed them to? Let me see. Well, there are some bred already. So we can look at those in profile and see what the best ones look like anyway. Gives you some idea of which way he's swinging. You're only looking at the top 20, but you go down here, click on broodmare profile, search. And it'll give you the next 3 dams below Some Beach Somewhere in a pedigree.
American Ideal.
You're My Candy Girls by American Ideal. Out of a Some Beach Somewhere mare, which is Mach 3 Beach Towel. And then the next 3 dams are an Adios Metaskipper Volumite combination. These are the 2 important ones here. This one here is Big Towner and a Metaskipper. Abercrombie Metaskipper, Big Towner Metaskipper. Abercrombie Metaskipper is an Adios line here. A couple of Big Towner Metaskipper, Abercrombie Metaskipper, Adios Metaskipper, Adios Metaskipper, Big Towner Metaskipper. I think I see a pattern here. Here's another one, another one, another one, another one, another one, another one here. The majority of the ones he's worked with so far are mares that have second and third dams that are combinations of Adios or Big Towner together with a Meadow Skipper line. Now it's not 100% because there's a couple down here. This one here, for instance, it's not quite the same. And this one here. And just so happens it's the same mare. Looks like. And there's one down here. 835,000.
Same mare.
So there are 17 of the 20 right now. Out of some mares that have this combination maternally. And that's not surprising, because if you look at the profile of Some Beat Somewhere himself, you will find that the mares or the general profile of Some Beat Somewhere is to have mares that are, well, inbred or line bred to Meadow Skipper, but have an Abercrombie or an Adios line or a Big Towner line maternally. And so that's consistent with his own profile in terms of his racehorses. So it's logical that his best brood mares will have the same kind of profile features as his best race mares. That's the way it works. It's why when you look at broodmare success rates for a particular sire, they will closely track his success rate as a racehorse. And not that Some Beat Somewhere is at that point yet, because he's very early in his career. His oldest are just 2014. This 2013, I guess. So he's got another 3 or 4 years to kind of max out his percentage in terms of broodmare percentage. I'm not sure where he is right now. We can soon see. It's probably in the 15 to 20% range. Hopefully that's. Whew. Well, got some good ones, but that doesn't look very good so far. Anyway, he's got 3 or 4 more years to pick it up, but that's I'm surprised. But you can see what the range of sires is. There's the Western, the Western, and the Western. You know, Western, 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 Western. There's one Arts Place. There's another Arts Place line. Another Western, another Arts Place line, Western. Arts Place line. And dragon again. Western line, Western line, Western line, Western line, Western line. One Lonely Better's Delight down here. Western, Arts Place, Western. So at this stage, maybe that's his problem. He's being bred to the wrong sire lines, because he's been bred almost exclusively, his best ones are almost exclusively out of Western Hanover line or by Western Hanover line sires, and or Arts Place line sires. Interesting. And very few Camfella line. And again, you know, when you start establishing a profile like that, it tends to stay that way, because people look at that. And of course, if you had a Western Hanover line, if you had a beach mare, you go in here, you look at the list, oh, well, I pretty much got to go with the Western Hanover line. So it's a self-propagating situation here in terms of success. That people don't take a chance of breeding anything else when you get a strong leaning towards a certain sire line, as we see here. So I'm afraid that somebody somewhere may be doomed as a consequence, because he's not going to get the variety of sire lines that perhaps he requires to be successful. But it really surprises me to see that percentage, because if you look at these stallion percentages, there's a lot of them there. Come on, pick her up. Here we go. His overall percentage as a stallion is in North America is 36.7%.
But they're all mostly geldings and horses and not too many mares there.
Well, we'll check and see what the mares are doing. Mares are 26.4%. I mean, that tells me that he's underachieving big time, because by this time he should be at least half of that after 7 years of foals from his mares. Maybe obviously the best has to be yet to come, but and he does have 3 or 4 years before typically they reach their peak at 10, 12 years of foals as broodmare sires. So
Breeding the mares that didn't race.
Hmm?
Breeding mares that didn't race as compared to the good mares that are racing. When you start breeding them is when he's going to show
Well,
up.
exactly. Yeah, no, early statistics are early. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't really judge his broodmare statistics based on just 7 crops. And the first 2 or 3 crops were probably mares that didn't race, or maybe should never have been bred in the first place.
Right.
So they're weighted in that respect. So the good ones that are racing, obviously there's a lot of them still racing because they're good race mares. When they hit the breeding sheds and start producing, I think his numbers will definitely pick up, because
Well,
it can't
they
stay down where they are.
They just give 450,000 for Somewhere Over the Rainbow.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, she was a millionaire winner out of a millionaire dam, so
Yeah.
a lot of money in that pedigree.
Yeah.
So that's the beach as it stands right now. So we'll hope that he'll do well, and I'm sure he will once a lot of these good mares end up being bred. Now, what else have I got here? That's pretty much it in terms of covering the there were some specific questions with respect to breeding certain mares or whatever.
Norman, will you explain
didn't
the
deal
Golden
with-
Cross, the different sections in the Golden Cross, how we plug it in?
Yeah, the Golden Cross report.
Yeah, on these different bars, I don't understand quite which way you go with what.
Okay, there's different bars that you can put. You can put the dam in here. The dam goes here, yeah. So you click look up, put the dam in there, type it in. Give me a dam.
Cocktail hour,
What?
cocktail hour,
I didn't get it.
Cocktail
cocktail
hour.
hour.
Oh, cocktail. Okay, sorry.
Damn it, bar hop.
It's that accent of yours.
COCK.
Yeah, see, I'm thinking of cocktail jet.
So does bar hopping have a
Is it coming up there? So,
fertility problem? They're not shipping semen?
who?
Bar hopping?
I haven't heard, I don't know. Apparently there must be something wrong.
That's what they got advertised.
Yeah,
Hanover
I
2
know, I
for.
see that.
Yeah.
Sometimes they can react to the extender a little bit for a while.
Okay, and then if you want to breed cocktail hour to, well, wait, let's put Muscle Hill in there again. Then you click search. Oops. Oh, no, I'm sorry, the Golden Cross is not that. It's Muscle Hill versus Credit Winner. That's what we got to put in here. We're gonna look at the cross between Muscle Hill and Credit Winner. And bar hopping should be right up there. Somebody's drilling their teeth or something. Ouch. So here's the statistics on it. There's resolve and bar hopping, the two of the best ones by Muscle Hill. It's a nice one too. There's a number of them. There's 9 all told. Average is 16 or 17% of the ones of racing age. Some of them are young ones. There's 2017s here. Might come on. There's Gin Stride was a nice filly this year.
Cricket Fashion was a pretty good 2-year-old.
Cricket Fashion, yeah, that's a full sister to
Oh, bro.
a full brother, yeah. So there's these couple of 2-year-olds are going to be marching up there. Me Too Baby down here as well. So this percentage is going to go up. It was a good cross, obviously. I don't know who that is drilling something. Anyway, there was the pedigree that Doug chose to read. It's the Star Sprite, Speedy Crown, inbred to Speedy Crown. That's what the Muscle Hills do.
She actually fit all 3 of your sire profiles.
What?
She actually fit all 3 of your sire profiles.
Yeah.
This breeding.
So that was a pretty good combination. Obviously, it has a lot of good elements. It's a TB pattern, obviously. Speedy Crown, inbred to a Speedy Crown line. Plus, you got the double cross of Star Sprite there. Larry, there's something on your phone, or you got something going on in the background. Do you mind shutting off the mic? There. Thank you.
I think he was vacuuming.
I
Okay,
was
we got 6 minutes.
multitasking.
We got 6 minutes left here. So any final questions here?
Norman, will you look at a horse called Whiskey Hanover?
Whiskey?
Yeah. I love this horse because he was doubled up on Yankee Blondie, but he sold this year as a yearling. I think he sold for 130,000. The Millers bought him. But I loved him because of the double up of Yankee Blondie, the
Yeah,
mother of.
well, that Yankee Blondie is a significant individual, yeah.
But you didn't pick him as
Well, that Yankee Glide family, of course, is also in chapter 7.
You didn't.
Yankee Bambi's his dam of TV Yankee, who was a fast horse.
Well, I guess the problem I would have with it, is you have a pattern. Bar Hopping's patterns is just the same as the Muscle Hills.
Right.
It's shown to be the same thing. His top two are, I think, like Elia.
Yeah.
Is inbred to Speedster line. There's the Speedy Crown Speedster line here. You got a Super Bowl across the pedigree. I know it's a Noble Victory line here, which is fine because this is a TB pedigree. So Pub Crawl, I don't know. I looked at him really, but
That's a Lindy Lane mare.
Lindy Lane mare.
Yeah.
Again, inbred to Speedy Crown.
Yeah.
And a Super Bowl line.
Yeah.
Pretty straightforward pattern for what, that's pretty well what I told you, Doug, way back when.
Exactly. But I mean, would the strength of Yankee Blondie allow you to say, maybe I'll make an exception?
No,
No? Okay.
no. You can't go against the general rule unless you got one that looks exactly like it in the good ones.
Right.
Arnold Dickey's a little different.
He's very different.
He's got no speedster at all, I don't think.
No.
Well, no, he has a double speedster, but he's a Broadway Hall, yeah. But he does have the double speedster down here.
Mhm.
So the three best ones are all like that.
Well, you
Here's,
certainly were right about the mare out of Pleasing Lady that sold for $350. My Abigail.
There's one that's a little different. It's only got a single Speedy Crown on it, but the thing about this one is it's a double. It's Super Bowl, Noble Victory, Speedy Crown. Super Bowl, Star Sprite, Super. No, wait, now this is all Super Bowl. No, it's not a double. No, it's a little different. Anyway, you go down through here, you might find some more of their. When they get past 100,000, I start looking at them seriously.
Right.
A lot of them can get to the races, regardless of their pedigree.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Doug. Well bred, Doug.
But I love the Yankee Blondie. Oh,
But this one here, I wish
a
them
nice video, great looking horse.
well. Yeah. They have a saying here on the island. She may be a good looker, but can she make biscuits?
I can make biscuits.
That's the what is it? There's another more common saying. All that glitters isn't gold or whatever. So anyway, that's
like
it
the
for
old song
today.
coming around the mountain.
What I'm going to do next week, I'm going actually going to put on a session for the breeders in Wales. I have a very good friend over there who's has a stallion station, and she heads up their breeders organization. And so Gwenann's invited me to put on a little seminar specifically for the Welsh people, looking at UK pedigree. So that's what I'm going to be doing next Sunday. I mean, if you're interested in that stuff, you're welcome to sit in and watch it, but that's tentative plan. It's the same time. It's 7 o'clock their time in the evening. So it's a Sunday evening, as far as I know. If it's any different, I'll let you know.
Okay. I'll watch. I'm
It's
interested.
all Pacers over there, by the way.
Yeah, that's
No
okay.
products. Anyway, thanks
Thank you.
again. And
Thank you.
Yeah,
I'll
thank
let you know
you.
when the next one is.
That was good.
Thanks.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Norm. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Norm.
Thank you, Norm.
You're welcome.